Hello, just wanted to give a quick recap on the City Council meeting last night, December 2nd, 2025. I'm going to do a very quick rundown and then I'm going to go into more detail. So a lot of different residents spoke, including myself. I spoke about the fact that it is actually the City Council's job to listen. Someone from the Eagles spoke as well during community input. They passed all the consent agenda items without going into it further. They did vote to do the special election to possibly repeal the zoning on the Catalyst Cascadia project, which is really good news. More details in there about some weird things there. And then they talked about the city manager selection process and made some decisions around how people will be chosen for the selection committee, then moved into their executive session. So community input, the room was packed. It was full. I spoke first. I actually spoke from the manual that clarifies that it is actually their job to pay attention. I posted that video because my daughter also chose to record the looks on the faces of two of the people who are some of the worst offenders of not looking at people who speak. And I heard from several people, and I experienced the same, that following me saying that was some of the most eye contact that residents have seen, that I have seen all year. So that is promising. Pretty much the consensus across the board, almost everyone who spoke about the special election and requesting that happen. There was one person from the Eagles who also said they wanted to go to a special election, and someone after the meeting had said that they felt like that was a really promising thing that the owner sent him to say that. I'm not so sure. I feel like it was probably a political ploy because at this point there's so much pressure that really there were two options. Either it was going to go to a special election, in which case there's a chance for the developer to drop in a whole lot more money, Greeley forward, all of the things to try to make sure that people don't repeal the zoning. Or he could have rolled his dice with the city council voting, with the new city council voting, on whether or not to repeal the zoning, in which there wouldn't be further discussion or opportunity. And he gets to look like the good guy that wants to have us have a voice. I think the reality is, if the developer was interested in us having a voice, he wouldn't have had his people doing Greeley Forward and doing everything they could to stop the petitions both times. They wouldn't have sent their mascot and cheerleaders and a room full of people from Windsor to our city council meeting a couple months ago to do the dog and pony show and talk about how important this is, and how much it's going to be so great for everyone, especially those families that don't live in Greeley. There would have been a lot of things that would have happened. So I don't buy that he is interested in us having a voice, but hey, we'll see what happens. As I had said, everything on the consent agenda passed. They didn't poll anything, so nothing much to report there. So the special election is going to be happening, which is a win. We worked really hard through two petitions, through legal battles, through all the things to get that on. However, I appreciate that Tommy Butler and Deb DeBeauty both tried to point out that, one, that doesn't actually stop the project. What it does is it removes the zoning. The developer could choose to try to come up with a different zoning, which I think would be difficult based on what he envisions it being, or has to wait a year or more if the special election happens and we repeal it. Has to wait at least a year in order to do the same zoning. But it does buy some time. I also appreciate that both Deb and Tommy asked if other items could be added onto the special election if it's going to be happening anyways. Tommy questioned the attorney and the clerk around why it was moved up to February, because initially it was said it would be March or April. I suspect that could have something to do with this next part, which is Deb and Tommy asked if they could add other things to the ballot. Deb specifically mentioned, adding in the funding mechanism or adding in just the project itself to ensure that actually the project itself is voted on, not just delayed or stalled. And the attorney said that things could be added. And when asked how long there was or if there was time, she was very vague at first and said, oh yeah, no, of course there's time. And Tommy really pushed and he goes, well, how much time? And basically what it came out to is they would have to be put to the council as an ordinance as a first reading at the next city council meeting on the 16th, and would have to have the second reading at the first meeting in January in order to make it on the special election ballot. So given that there wasn't a strict time frame on when that special election happens, it's possible that it was intended to be expedited to reduce the chances of those additional things getting added on. My hope and my call to action is we don't know yet if Rudy and Roth will blindly vote, as it has felt like the original 5 kind of did on every aspect of this project. But I would hope that if we could reach out to Brian, Rudy, and Ryan Roth and request that they support what Tommy and Deb put up at the next meeting as potential ordinances to get on the special election, because we'll have to have a majority city council vote to get to get past the first reading and then at the second reading. But there would be a hearing as Tommy and Deb add that on, that we have some additional time and an opportunity to speak to try to get council to vote for, yes, let's put that on the ballot and give people a voice. So that's kind of that aspect of it. The other thing that I just wanted to speak to a little bit is on the search for a city manager. So again, Tommy Butler paused as they were talking about the selection committee and said, you know, when we hired Raymond Lee, it was the mayor plus 1 council member. I see it's only the mayor. Why is that? And the I forget which person it was from the city that was speaking. However, it was the HR manager. Her response was her and Mayor Hall had discussed and felt like it was better to not, sorry about the dogs, it was better to not ask more time of the people on council, which seems a little strange that was made unilaterally and is very different from what it's been. Tommy spoke up, said, I would absolutely love to have someone from council. I think that's important. Deb Beauty agreed, as did Brian Rudy. And then a weird thing happened is Mayor Hall then said, and I think Brian Rudy had said, you know, maybe Mayor Pro Tem McDonald, but it hadn't really been decided. And then Mayor Hall goes, oh, so yep, we'll do Mayor Pro Tem McDonald. Does everyone agree? Everyone agrees. Consensus. Okay. There wasn't actually a verbal vote. He just kind of made that decision. Looking around, people looked a little confused as that was happening. It was not the only time during the meeting that happened where he seemed to make a decision without necessarily going to everyone. So that was weird thing number 1. The second thing is there's supposed to be 2 community members. You know, generally in our boards and our commissions and stuff, people apply from the community in order to do that, are interviewed and selected. As that was brought up of, okay, well, how do the community members get on? Mayor Hall stated that he decided that he thinks that it would really just be best if the members of council pick a person or 2 that they think might be good, and then they can decide between those people that the council brings. So there will be no opportunity for people to apply or express interest in this. We are just hoping that our council members will choose people that will work in our favor and will represent all of Greeley. I'm not entirely sure what that's supposed to look like. So that felt bothersome, and it was another one of the times where Mayor Hall was like, yeah, everyone agree? Yeah, I think that's just what we're going to do. So I have some questions as to whether or not that is allowed to claim consensus by just kind of looking around and deciding in the moment like that. And I will likely reach out to one of the council members just to ask that to clarify. Beyond that, they moved into executive session, and there wasn't too much more to report. But just as a final, my call to action, my hope would be that you all might be willing to reach out to Brian Rudy and Ryan Roth to ask that those items get added on for the special election, and perhaps feel free to ask questions around how some of those decisions were made. And if you'd like to be one of the community members that helps to choose the city manager, maybe sending in an email and requesting that you be considered for that. I'm not I said, I'm not quite sure. I've never seen that happen in a meeting, but obviously I'm not at all of them to see, but I never saw Mayor Gates do something like that where in the moment it was a just kind of look at everyone and then say, yep, it looks like we all agree that's what's happening. So anyways, I hope everyone has a wonderful night, is safe in the snow, and talk soon.